Welcome, dear viewers. Tonight, we dive into a terrifying tale from the depths of Reddit. Echoes in the Hollow. Part 1. Introduction. Chapter 1. The Arrival. Jenna Thompson squinted against the afternoon sun as her car rolled into the small, unassuming town of Hollow Creek. Nestled in a valley surrounded by dense woods, the town seemed like a relic from another time, with its cobblestone streets and quaint, rustic houses. She pulled up to the school where she would be teaching and took a deep breath, letting the quiet, almost eerie tranquility of the place wash over her. Jenna had come to Hollow Creek to start over. After graduating college and enduring a series of personal setbacks, she needed a fresh start, and this remote town seemed like the perfect escape. The town's only school had an opening for an English teacher, and she had jumped at the opportunity, hoping that the simplicity of rural life would help her heal. As she walked into the school, Jenna felt the eyes of the townspeople on her. Hollow Creek was small and newcomers were rare. She smiled politely and introduced herself to the principal, Mr. Walters, a kind but reserved man in his 60s. He gave her a brief tour and handed her the keys to her new home, a small cottage at the edge of town. Chapter 2. The House on the Hill. That evening, as Jenna unpacked her belongings, she noticed the silhouette of an old, abandoned house perched on a hill in the distance. It stood out starkly against the twilight sky, its windows dark and empty. Curious, she asked a neighbor about it the next day. "Oh, that old place?" Mrs. Higgins, an elderly woman with a penchant for gossip, said with a shiver. "That's the Hollow House. It's been abandoned for as long as anyone can remember. They say it's haunted, you know?" Jenna laughed softly, dismissing the idea of ghosts as mere superstition. But something about the house intrigued her. She decided to visit it the following weekend, thinking it might make for an interesting story to tell her students. Chapter 3. First Impressions. The path to Hollow House was overgrown and winding, and as Jenna approached, she felt a chill run down her spine. The house, once grand, was now a decaying ruin. Ivy clung to its walls, and the roof sagged under years of neglect. She pushed open the creaky front door and stepped inside, her footsteps echoing in the vast, empty space. The interior was just as neglected, with dust-covered furniture and peeling wallpaper. As Jenna explored, she felt an odd sense of familiarity, as if she had been here before. She shook off the feeling and continued her exploration, eventually finding a small, dusty library. On a whim, she pulled a book from the shelf, revealing a hidden compartment behind it. Inside was a stack of old diaries and letters, their pages yellowed with age. Chapter 4. Unearthing the Past. That night, Jenna sat in her cottage, poring over the diaries and letters. They belonged to the previous occupants of Hollow House, the Whitmore family, who had mysteriously disappeared decades ago. The entries were filled with tales of joy and sorrow, love and loss. But as Jenna read on, the tone grew darker, hinting at something sinister. The final entries were the most disturbing. They spoke of strange noises in the night, shadowy figures, and an overwhelming sense of dread. The last diary entry ended abruptly, leaving Jenna with more questions than answers. Chapter 5. The First Encounter. Determined to learn more, Jenna returned to Hollow House the next day. As she wandered through the empty rooms, she felt a sudden drop in temperature. Her breath fogged in the air, and she heard faint whispers echoing through the halls. Panic set in, and she fled the house, her heart pounding in her chest. Back in town, Jenna confided in Mr. Walters, who listened with a grave expression. "The Whitmore family," he said slowly, "was one of the most respected families in Hollow Creek. Their disappearance remains one of the town's greatest mysteries." Chapter 6. Whispers in the Dark. Over the next few weeks, Jenna couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. She heard whispers in her cottage at night and saw fleeting shadows out of the corner of her eye. Her dreams were plagued by visions of Hollow House and the Whitmore family, their faces twisted in fear. Despite her growing unease, Jenna felt drawn to the house. She began spending her weekends there, searching for clues about the Whitmore's fate. The townspeople grew wary of her, their warnings becoming more urgent. But Jenna was determined to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. Part 2, Rising Tension. Chapter 7, Echoes of the Past. Jenna spent her evenings sifting through the old diaries and letters, trying to piece together the Whitmore family's story. The deeper she delved, the more she felt the weight of their tragic history. The Whitmores had once been a happy family. Charles Whitmore, a wealthy businessman, his wife Margaret, and their 2 children, Emily and Thomas. But something had changed, something that drove them to the brink of madness. Jenna discovered a letter from Margaret to her sister, written shortly before their disappearance. It spoke of Charles's increasing paranoia and the strange occurrences in the house. Margaret mentioned hearing whispers at night and seeing shadowy figures moving through the halls. The final lines of the letter were smudged and barely legible, but Jenna could make out one chilling sentence. "We are not alone in this house." Chapter 8, The Portrait. One Saturday afternoon, Jenna decided to explore the attic of Hollow House. Dust motes danced in the air as she climbed the creaky wooden stairs. The attic was cluttered with old furniture and forgotten possessions. As she rummaged through the debris, she found a large, covered object leaning against the wall. Pulling away the dusty sheet, she revealed a portrait of the Whitmore family. The painting was eerily lifelike, capturing the family in a moment of happiness. But as Jenna stared at their faces, she felt an overwhelming sense of sorrow. The eyes of the family members seemed to follow her, their expressions shifting subtly, almost imperceptibly, to one of despair. Chapter 9, The Historian. Desperate for answers, Jenna sought out Mr. Ellis, the town's historian. A reclusive man in his 70s, Mr. Ellis had spent his life documenting Hollow Creek's history. He was initially reluctant to speak about the Whitmores, but Jenna's determination won him over. "The Whitmore family was indeed a tragedy," Mr. Ellis said, his voice tinged with sadness. "Charles Whitmore was a respected man, but he became obsessed with the occult. He believed that the house was a gateway to another realm, and he conducted strange rituals in the basement." Mr. Ellis handed Jenna an old photograph of Charles Whitmore, standing beside a peculiar symbol carved into the basement wall. "I believe that symbol is the key to understanding what happened to them," he said. Chapter 10, The Basement. Armed with this new information, Jenna returned to Hollow House, her resolve stronger than ever. She found the basement entrance hidden behind a heavy bookshelf. The air grew colder as she descended the stairs, her flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. The basement was a labyrinth of stone walls and narrow passages. Jenna felt a sense of dread growing with each step. Finally, she found the symbol Mr. Ellis had mentioned, carved into the wall. As she examined it, she felt a sudden rush of wind and heard the faint sound of chanting. Chapter 11, Visions. Jenna's flashlight flickered, and the air grew colder. She felt a presence behind her and turned to see the ghostly figure of Charles Whitmore. His eyes were hollow, and his voice echoed in the confined space. "You shouldn't be here," he whispered. "Leave while you still can." Jenna's vision blurred, and she was transported to another time. She saw the Whitmore family gathered in the basement, performing a ritual. Charles chanted in a language she didn't understand, while Margaret and the children watched in fear. A dark shadow loomed over them, and the scene dissolved into chaos. Chapter 12, Connection. Jenna woke up on the basement floor, her head throbbing. She realized that the house was trying to show her something, trying to communicate. The visions were a glimpse into the past, a key to unlocking the mystery of the Whitmores. As Jenna left the basement, she felt a newfound determination. She knew that the answers she sought were within her reach, but she also knew that the house held dangers she had yet to face. Chapter 13. Strain. Back in town, Jenna's obsession with the house began to affect her relationships. Her students noticed her distracted demeanor, and Mr. Walters expressed concern for her well-being. The townspeople whispered about her behind her back, fearing that she was stirring up old ghosts. Jenna confided in her friend, Sarah, who had been supportive since her arrival. "I feel like I'm on the brink of something," Jenna said, her voice trembling. "But I'm also scared. The things I've seen, they're not normal." Sarah squeezed her hand. "Whatever you decide, Jenna, I'm here for you. But please be careful." Chapter 14. The Warning. One evening, Jenna received an anonymous letter in her mailbox. It was written in a shaky hand and warned her to stop her investigation. "The house is cursed," it read. "Leave now, or you will suffer the same fate as the Whitmores." Jenna felt a chill run down her spine. Someone in the town knew more than they were letting on. She needed to find out who had sent the letter and why they were so desperate to keep the house's secrets buried. Chapter 15. The Confrontation. Determined to confront her fears, Jenna returned to Hollow House one final time. She gathered her courage and entered the basement, where the symbol still glowed faintly on the wall. She began to recite the words she had heard in her vision, hoping to summon the entity that haunted the house. As she chanted, the air grew colder, and shadows swirled around her. The ghostly figures of the Whitmore family appeared, their faces twisted in anguish. The dark entity loomed over them, its presence suffocating. Chapter 16. The Showdown. Jenna faced the entity, her voice steady despite the fear that gripped her. "I know what you are," she said. "You feed on fear and suffering. But I won't let you take any more lives." The entity roared and the ground shook. Jenna's determination wavered, but she held her ground. She reached out to the spirits of the Whitmores, offering them her strength. "You don't have to be afraid anymore," she whispered. "You can find peace." The spirits of the Whitmores began to glow, their faces softening. The entity shrieked in rage as its power weakened. Jenna continued to chant, her voice rising above the chaos. With a final burst of light, the entity was banished, and the Whitmore spirits faded into the ether, free at last. Chapter 17. The Aftermath. Jenna collapsed to the ground, exhausted but triumphant. The house was silent, the oppressive atmosphere lifted. She knew that the Whitmores were finally at peace and that the house's dark history had been laid to rest. Back in town, the news of Jenna's victory spread quickly. The townspeople were relieved and grateful, their fear replaced by hope. Mr. Walters and Sarah congratulated her, their concern giving way to pride. Chapter 18. Personal Growth. In the weeks that followed, Jenna reflected on her experiences. She realized that her journey had not only been about uncovering the past, but also about confronting her own demons. She had faced her fears and emerged stronger, more resilient. Jenna's troubled past no longer haunted her. She found a sense of belonging in Hollow Creek, a place that had become her home. She continued teaching, her passion for helping her students renewed. Chapter 19. Closure. The town decided to renovate Hollow House, turning it into a museum to honor the Whitmore family and the town's history. Jenna played a key role in the project, ensuring that the house's story was told with honesty and respect. As the renovation was completed, Jenna stood in the house one last time, feeling a sense of closure. The house, once a place of fear, had become a symbol of resilience and hope. Part 3, Resolution. Chapter 20, Reflections on the Journey. As the days turned into weeks, Jenna took time to reflect on her journey. She thought about the courage it took to confront the haunting and the determination that drove her to uncover the truth about the Whitmore family. She realized that facing the supernatural had forced her to face her own inner demons as well. Jenna's past had been marked by personal loss and a sense of displacement. Moving to Hollow Creek was her way of escaping, but she found that the true escape lay in confronting her fears head-on. She had come out the other side stronger with a renewed sense of purpose. Chapter 21. The Town's Transformation. The transformation of Hollow House into a museum became a symbol of change and resilience for the entire town. The community rallied together to restore the old house, preserving its history while turning it into a place of learning and reflection. Jenna watched with pride as the townspeople, once fearful and suspicious, embraced the project. The museum became a beacon of hope, attracting visitors who were curious about the house's dark past and the story of its redemption. Mr. Walters, the school principal, praised Jenna's bravery and commitment. "You brought light to our town, Jenna. You've helped us face our history and move forward." Chapter 22. A New Beginning. On the day of the museum's grand opening, Jenna stood at the entrance, welcoming visitors. The house, now vibrant and full of life, stood as a testament to the power of confronting and overcoming fear. As the first visitors entered, Jenna felt a deep sense of accomplishment. She had not only uncovered the mystery of the Whitmore family, but had also found a place where she truly belonged. The museum's exhibits told the story of the family's tragic past, the haunting, and the eventual liberation of their spirits. Chapter 23, Moving Forward. In the months that followed, Jenna settled into her life in Hollow Creek. She continued teaching at the local school, finding joy in her work and in her interactions with the students. Her experiences had made her more empathetic, and she used her newfound strength to inspire her students. Sarah, her close friend, remained a constant source of support. The bond between them grew stronger, and together, they explored the beauty of the town and its surroundings, discovering hidden trails and scenic spots that deepened Jenna's love for her new home. Chapter 24. Final Thoughts. One evening, Jenna returned to the museum after closing hours. She wandered through the exhibits, feeling a profound sense of peace. She stopped in front of the portrait of the Whitmore family, now restored and displayed prominently. Their faces, once filled with despair, seemed to radiate a quiet contentment. Jenna placed her hand on the glass, a silent promise to honor their memory and ensure their story was never forgotten. She knew that her journey in Hollow Creek was far from over, but she felt ready to face whatever the future held. As she left the museum, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the town. Jenna took a deep breath, savoring the tranquility of the moment. Hollow Creek had become her sanctuary, a place where she had found not only a fresh start, but also a profound sense of belonging. Epilogue: The Legacy of Hollow House. Years later, the story of Hollow House became a cherished part of Hollow Creek's history. The museum continued to draw visitors, and Jenna's role in uncovering the truth became the stuff of local legend. She remained in Hollow Creek, her life intertwined with the town and its people. Jenna often shared her story with new residents and visitors, encouraging them to face their fears and seek the truth, no matter how daunting it might seem. Her journey had taught her that true strength lay in understanding and embracing one's past, and in finding the courage to move forward. And so, the echoes in the hollow continued, not as whispers of fear, but as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the enduring power of hope. Thank you for joining us on this harrowing journey. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more tales of terror. Until next time, stay safe and beware the shadows.